Chairman McNinch for possible action. Before I turn it over to Dave, just so you guys can get your thought process going here, I've been asked multiple times how I'm going to proceed through this agenda, whether I'm going to break it out in the maps, into demerits, into education components, and have public comment on each one. I have been saying that was going to be a game time decision, recognizing how many people were in the room and where we were in the process. My decision right now is we're going to have one public comment period on all of them. I'm not going to turn this into another committee meeting. We've had so many hours of committee meeting to discuss everything that we're going to discuss right now. Be thinking about how you're going to go through it, and you might want to work as groups and hit your points separately, but we're going to hold everybody to 3 minutes, and we're going to get through this agenda item. And I can honestly say we've given everybody ample time to make every argument they have. We've gone out of our way to travel around the state, make ourselves available, review as much information as we can, read all the emails. I think it's time to get this going and make decisions. So Commissioner McNinch, you want to go from here, and we'll take it out to public comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess that some of the folks over here were having a hard time hearing earlier. Is that a little better? Okay, all right. So, you know, I've been debating about the best way to wrap up, 5-6 meetings, and probably in the order of 50+ hours worth of testimony and deliberation into something that we can process and pretty orderly. And I guess what I would ask is that and John, this would include you, I think, at this point in time, that the committee help me kind of represent, make sure that we stay on track in terms of where, that I'm representing things the way that they came out, and I ask you guys to help me out with that. There's a lot of things that have occurred. So I think most people in the room are pretty familiar with what's happened and what's gone down. Obviously, you have a pretty good idea, you wouldn't be here. So I think a couple of the things I would like to address real quick. There were concerns expressed prior to the commission meeting regarding process, and I've asked Rich to help me out a little bit with this, and with regards to the meeting minutes and how information came out. And I think just a real quick explanation on how we've moved forward and where we've come from a little bit, hopefully will alleviate some of that. There's going to be plenty of opportunities. There's still going to be opportunity beyond this meeting, regardless of what happens out of this meeting, to participate in the process even further. So in a nutshell, the committee has made a handful of recommendations over the last several meetings. I believe starting in March, we actually started to take action on certain items. Those have been presented in the paperwork. And at the May meeting, there were some final actions taken by the committee, and staff prepared a document that was forwarded to LCB, Legislative Council Bureau. And the intent of that was to establish a position, a placeholder for anything that this commission may do with regards to the trapping issue. It was never intended to circumvent any processes. It was never intended to to not be transparent. We've made every effort to be transparent, and so the idea is that if we ran into as we run into the legislative session beginning July 1, the regulation, if something came from this committee and if there was something approved in August, that it would be a permanent regulation. We wouldn't have to go back through and do it all again as a temporary beginning now. That was kind of the intent. And I think more importantly, it was very consistent with the way we've done our business for 12 years that I'm aware of, And this is just the process that the departments use, and I think what's made this one stand out is the issue at hand. There have been a lot of bills and a lot of things that have been presented the same fashion that haven't been quite as controversial. They haven't been as the awareness hasn't been as significant. So I think that the fact that the combination of the interest, the combination of the anxieties, probably created a little bit of this. But the intent was never to circumvent anything, regardless of what comes out of here today. Whether action is taken or not, if there is some type of action that's taken, it will have to come back to this commission in August. And Rich, maybe before I get any deeper, I'm going to stop and ask you, if you don't mind, to kind of see if you can frame it up for me a little better. Not necessarily in August. Thank you. Sorry.
Deputy Director Rich Haskins, you've captured it pretty well. There was two parallel activities going on here. The LCB process, and like you indicated, the deadline is June 30th to get things to LCB, to have them enrolled, if you want to act on them as a permanent regulation. After that point, you can still act, but it'd be a temporary regulation you'd have to rehear. So we were trying to accommodate the commission to try to get something to LCB as a placeholder. So we took what came out of the committee meeting and drafted a regulation based upon what came from the committee. Now, that's what's in the support material, is the Department of Wildlife draft. We took the information from the committee and crafted that into that draft regulation. At the same time, though, in order, if you do wish to act in August, and then once again, if you don't have to, we needed to get it to LCB. There's a 30-day public notice process, so you start counting back from the commission meeting. There's a 30-day window there for LCB to have it. There's notice requirements. It takes Joanne several days to get those taken care of. So you started counting backwards, and soon after that committee meeting, we had to act and get something down to LCB as a placeholder. Once again, it's a placeholder. As long as you don't change the intent of that regulation, you're good. You can go in there and change it from 24 to 96 to 48 or not act at all. That's your choice. It's merely a placeholder. It gives you the ability to act. So.
Thank you, Rich. And we have consulted with our DAG Newton, and I even attempted to make comment on it at the May meeting, and I believe the meeting before the process that looking forward. So I tried to do a little preemptive going into all this. It just tells me that maybe we didn't explain it well enough, and so I guess for what it's worth, if you're in a position where you're going to be reassured, then maybe you're reassured. If not, then you might be more skeptical than ever. But I think that one of the emails used the term presumptuous, and I think for me personally, and I think I can speak on behalf of the whole commission, I don't presume anything with regards to this particular issue. I have no idea where we're headed. I don't know what's going to happen. So, having that as a placeholder was really intended as that. It was never intended to set a direction or anything of that nature. So,
one further note: if the intent was to have this in place for this upcoming trapping season, and that's where the August meeting comes in. After you guys act on it, after the commission acts on it, it has to go to the legislative commission also on regulations. So there's a time lapse there. So if you really do want this in place, if it's not that significant to you, that's fine. It can be in place for the next trapping season. But the idea was we still have that process to complete, and then we have a notice of get the information out to the trappers. Not all trappers are involved in this process, so there's a time lag there to get information out to trappers if you do make changes, to make them aware of what those changes are. So that's the significance of that August meeting. You can push it off later, but it jeopardizes having it in place if that's your desire for this trapping season. If it's not, then you can take a longer time and have it in place for the following trapping season. So.
Thanks, Rich. And if you could just stay there for one more second here. So the second item that kind of came out had to do with the minutes from the meetings, from the committee meetings. And I think there was some concern, well, there definitely was concern that the meeting minutes from these committee meetings weren't being posted. And anytime, and I think this is consistent with how we've run our commission and how we've run our committee meetings. And I'm going to stop short of saying that there's exceptions, but it's just the way that I've always understood the process, that when we're finished with the meeting, we have 30 days to get those meeting minutes out. And if we're going to approve them as a committee or something, then that would need to be done. Otherwise, they become official record as they're written. So what happens is that the idea here is that the way that we've gone in the past is anytime we have a set of minutes that's completed, those are made available. They're not posted. Okay, they're made available to the public. That's what the law requires. If they're approved minutes, they've run through a committee and they've been formally recognized, then they're posted. Is that fair enough? So
I think with David's assistance, I think that was fair. What we've run up against here of late is when you have a whole series of, Trapping Committee was a pretty active committee, back to back to back. It puts a lot of stress on our staff who have other jobs besides committee support. So you're correct, they were available to the public if they asked for them in a draft format. They weren't approved, but I think we met the letter of the law. They were available, and folks that did ask for them, we did provide them. So, David, is that correct that they?
That's correct. They're not required to be posted. They're simply required to be made available to the public at their request after 30 days of the adjournment of the meeting.
It's our desire, obviously, to get those turned around, but there's a lot of factors that go into that. Once again, staff assignments and other activities. Unfortunately, these didn't get all the way through that process, so, but they were available.
okay. So with that, I thank you, Rich. With that, I guess in a lot of ways, I'm not going to be able to wrap up all the time that we've spent in the meetings. I think in a nutshell, what it boils down to, at least from my perspective, is that we have, starting from the very beginning on, everybody in this room probably has a different opinion on what the issue was, what SB 213 requires us to do, what the expectations were. As we started to work through the process, other issues came up that were thought to potentially have impact or may have impact on how we think of trapping in the visitation frequency sense, and that might be relevant to the conversation. So we explored some of those things, and some of those, I'll give you some examples, were assessment of demerit points for certain violations, education, non-target data, things of that nature. So there were a number of things that were explored and discussed that maybe weren't in the specific context of SB 213, but that were thought by individuals to have potential impact on where we might head. So the bottom line is that we came back, we started making decisions in March, and for every variable that's out there, I think everybody had a different opinion. It was really the most dynamic situation I've ever seen. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Everybody was it really was. It was 20 variables, 20 different opinions about each variable. Some were real important to some people. That same one could be totally irrelevant to others. And as we move forward, all those things, people, we're all developing our own thought process and our own position on these individual issues. And when you get done, I think everybody in this room might have a different view on every issue. And it's been really difficult for me personally to process. But I think that the committee members have largely come up with where they stand on things, and some of those are reflected in the decisions, some of the votes that were taken. Do I go through these? Do you guys want me to go through each of these, or have you had a chance to read them? Do you have questions? You want to just start conversation? What would you like to do?
I think we're better off going through them, because with us only having one public comment period, I think if we cover everything in its entirety, then the public has a chance to hear it, and then they can make their comments accordingly.
Do you want to step through it in the order that it's in the support material or by topic?
Let's go by topic, but No, let's go in order, let's go in chronological order, because we may have to, we jump back and forth on topics depending where we were. But if we go in chronological order, it's in his support material, then it all shakes out at the bottom.
Before we go there, can I make a comment?
Commissioner Drew?
I guess just before we get into the kind of the history and the background on this, I did want to thank Dave for chairing the committee. He's been on this, I asked him on the way down, how long have you been on the commission? Total years. And he told me a dozen. I've been here 3, and he's one tough nut to make a dozen, I'll tell you what. But
You're an idiot.
this has not been an easy process for him, and everyone's had an opinion on how he runs his meetings. And no matter what he does, he gets criticized. And I don't care how he does it, how he changes it, to try and respond and be accommodating. Everyone's got an opinion, and I've seen a lot of them change. And it hasn't been easy for him. He's got a very, very tough topic to deal with. It's something that's a powder keg, emotionally charged issue. And in my opinion, he's done a hell of a job. So with the background he gave you on some of the criticism that he's taken and owned, I would just say thank you, Dave. And when you're making criticism, that's fine. I'll wear it too. But be accurate and be consistent and be respectful for the job he's trying to do.
I appreciate that, Jeremy. Thank you. The committee's had a tough time. We're all feeling it. Okay, it's not just you guys. We're all feeling it, and I appreciate that. So the committee's worked real hard, and we've just done the best that we can. So we'll start off with March 7th. This is the weekend that so we'd had several meetings up to this point, and we'd taken public comment in a number of venues, Reno and Vegas primarily at that time. And we decided to venture out to Elko. And Elko on March 7th, this is when we made our first official vote. And that particular vote was specific to, as we go through these, keep in mind that largely the committee's been talking about three different areas in a sense, okay? We've been talking about the more populated areas around the Reno-Sparks area and kind of that Sierra Front there, that eastern Sierra Front down through the Gardnerville area. A good chunk of Clark County down in southern Nevada, and the rest of the state, okay? So kind of keep those 3 things in mind. It kind of might help to understand. I don't think we need to explain it too much. But so up in Elko, there was a vote taken, and it was decided by the committee to recommend to the full commission that we maintain 96-hour trap check outside of those areas that aren't the rest of the state. So basically areas 26, 28, 19, 2, and 29. So largely those areas around Washoe County, Reno-Sparks area, and points south, and some big chunk of area down in southern Nevada. And we hadn't taken any action on those at this point. Does anybody have any questions about that for now? Any of the commission? Okay. So on March 8th, we drove to Reno and had a second meeting where there was decisions made regarding an area in the Reno-Sparks area, okay? And that's represented on the map that everybody has. So around the Reno-Sparks area, and largely including areas 19 to 29, is that? Just 19?
29.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, that's good. All right. So that map is represented, and that one has been pretty consistent since that date. There hasn't been any further discussions on that. So that map is still reflective of the meeting that we had in Reno on March 8th. Okay, we can get into some of the deliberations and stuff because everybody had a different reason for voting one way or the other. And there was okay, yeah, and in the Reno meeting, we also determined, we decided that we would be dealing with 1 calendar day as opposed to 24 hours. Okay. Along with senior moments, I've got getting senior eyes, it looks like. Okay, so also in the Reno meeting, there were discussions on potentially moving forward with some trapper education. It was thought that there were opportunities, and when we say trapper, I should clarify that, trapper and public education. So it's not just a function of you know, talking to trappers about where they're trapping and where they should or shouldn't be, but it's also a function of talking to the public and educating the public on trapping related activities. So, and I think that some of the thoughts were that if there were, you know, if trapping continues and people are out and about and their animal gets stuck in a trap, how you would release them, that kind of information. That hasn't been vetted out much. Okay, it's just, it was I think that it was a recommendation from the committee to the commission that that we consider some additional education aspects. Okay. Okay, also in Reno on March 8th, there was a discussion on assessment of demerit points. Okay, and there were basically two areas that the committee discussed, and one of those had to do with trapping on private or private property without permission. Okay, and there's already demerit points assessed, but the proposal would be that if you were doing it willfully without permission, that the assessment of demerit points would be a 12-point assessment. Okay, so if you haven't got permission and you were trapping on private property and there was willful knowledge of that and neglect, that would be more of an egregious violation and warrant a 12-point violation. So a 12-point demerit assessment. So,
and during that discussion, we did not change a 6 demerit violation to a 12 demerit violation. The 6 demerit trespassing violation still applies to hunting and trapping on private property without permission, or, you know, trespassing. I wanted it to be a two-stage item, and that's why I made the motion. The first one, there's incidents where there can be fences out in the middle of nowhere, and you don't know whether it's a range fence that separates one BLM allotment from another, and you cross it, you don't know whether you're on private property or not. It's not posted, marked, or anything. That could be incidental trapping on private property. And there's 2 stages to get to the 12 demerit point phase, from 6 demerit to 12 demerit. The game warden would have to determine it was a willful act and done in a malicious intent type activity, and the game warden would write it as a 12 demerit ticket. But just because the game warden writes it as a 12 demerit ticket doesn't mean that the judge of justice of the peace has to continue with the 12 demerit ticket. He could look at the facts of the case, listen to the argument in front of the court, and at that point he has the choice to make it a 12 or 6 demerit an action. The main reason this came up is we sat in multiple meetings that we would see new people come in to testify at a trapping committee meeting. And during their testimony, they would talk about the reason they were there wasn't they were supporting Trail Safe or supporting the Trapper Association. They were there because their own pet was trapped on their own private property that was clearly private property that somebody willfully trespassed on and caught their companion animal. One of them resulting in an injury to the owner while she's trying to release her caught dog on her own property. And I really don't have much tolerance for that, and I don't think that's a 6 demerit violation. People doing that kind of activity really need to be addressed and let it be known that it's not a cost of doing business when you're doing that. It will cost you your business by doing that. So that's why I threw that out there, and I just wanted to do a follow-up as why we did that at that meeting.
Okay, thank you. So I apologize. I've been referencing the Trapper and Public Education and the demerit points as being a meeting in Vegas. in Reno, that's not true. It was the one in Vegas is where the actions were taken for those two particular activities. So sorry for misleading there. Additionally, in Vegas, this is April 5th, we had a similar discussion similar to the assessment of demerits for 48-hour for violations of visiting your traps in excess of 48 hours beyond what's required. Okay, again, trying to address more egregious type of activities beyond just what occurs from a typical violation for the trap check time. So, and that would be a 6 demerit point. And the point of that, I believe at the time, was that if it's a 6 demerit, it's currently listed as a things that aren't addressed are currently listed as a 3. Okay, so if there's additional violations, they just continue to be 3-point violations. But by making it a 6-point demerit, and I think the trappers are well aware of it, if there's a second violation, then that would be a 12 demerit instead of a 6, which makes 18 demerits, and it would preclude somebody from going in and doing a class and getting some of the demerits taken off, and then being able to go out and do another, having another violation of the same activity. And I think that it was largely felt that the acts that persistence was egregious, and that we needed to work those folks out of the system too. Wasn't acceptable. At least these are the recommendations of the committee to the commission. So, are there any questions on that particular one? Okay.
One thing, Dave, when you go through these, some of them were 5-0 votes, but most of the votes taken by this committee were 3-2 votes. And they were very tough votes. I mean, it was not clear cut. This is a recommendation by the committee on a 3-2 vote. They were not unanimous votes by any stretch of the imagination. So it was very divided.
There was a 5-0 vote to approve our minutes one time.
Yeah.
There was a 5-0 vote on the education, and there was one additional 5-0, I believe, having to do with something that we're coming up with here in just a second. So in May 29th in Reno, we largely have Las Vegas to deal with. And that was some other criticism that we had, was talking about Las Vegas stuff in Reno. And it's very unfortunate that we can't accommodate those meetings where they impact people the most every time. It's just we did the best that we could. We flew down. Some of us stayed an extra night in Vegas after the April meeting because we missed flights, and we were very fortunate to have friends that we could contact because there were no rooms to stay in. So we had kind of an interesting night. And by the way, Joanne, thank you so much for what you did that night. It was incredible. And otherwise, we might have been sleeping on the street. And the other option was to drive home that night, I guess. But anyway, so May 29th, and we were dealing with proposals that had been thrown out on the table for Clark County, okay, Southern Nevada, and that's mostly what we dealt with at that meeting. And there were probably 5 different proposals, and we took them one at a time, and we systematically went through them, and we ultimately boiled those down to one that didn't fit what the committee was looking for specifically at that time, but it was one that the committee felt that they could discuss and come to some decisions on, and that's what happened. So I won't get into the ones that were turned back. We don't have those maps sitting in front of us, but there were 4 proposals on the table. One of them had to, and largely they had to do with 24 hours, 24-hour statewide. One was a 24-hour. One from the Trappers Association was 96-hour statewide. One from Trail Safe was 24-hour statewide. And then there were some, one from Trail Safe that had to do with certain areas that they believed were populated or heavily used. These areas were in close proximity to those areas. So it had a number of areas, and I think if everybody remembers back, we had gotten a list of some of those at one point. It was about a 9 or 10-page list of areas that were heavily used in their minds. That one was denied, and then there was a variation submitted by an individual that about 24 hours in Clark County, specific to Clark County. And what we did was take a variation of the map that you have in front of you, and that wasn't exactly illustrated in the manner that it is with us today, but that was the basis of the map that you see in front of you now. So during that, there was actually a vote that did go 5-0 regarding an area where we wouldn't have trapping, and that area was the illegal firearms discharge area, which on your maps is the yellow line on your maps there. And the committee was unanimous on that one, that there was a 5-0 vote to have a 24-hour trap check in that area alone. Okay, and in discussions with the board, the committee, the additional actions were taken to expand that area to the areas that you see outside of that yellow lined area on the map. Okay, and that's largely what the motions were on May 29th. Now, the reasons for that are varied, and that might be part of our discussion. It might be better just to incorporate those as part of our discussion and conversation. Did I represent that fair enough, John? Fair enough? Okay. Okay, so unless any of the committee members have any additional questions, I think, or comments, rather, if anybody has questions, maybe we can get started that way. I'm not sure where we would want to get going, so. Yeah.
Could I get
John,
you to come
let's
up?
come on up real quick.
Yeah, John Sullivan, for the record, I was on the committee. You mentioned a unanimous vote for the firearms area. That would, correct me if I'm wrong, that would kind of constitute another map. It wasn't a proposal in a map form at the time, it was in a verbal proposal. So the discharge area, which passed unanimously, in some ways could constitute another map.
I understand
Yeah,
what you're saying.
we don't have it as a third map because it was brought up as a verbal motion. But I think you could consider it as, there's 3 maps out there.
Fair
One
enough.
of the firearms area. And you explained it correctly that the map is there in front of you now. It's the yellow area kind of stuck in the middle of the bigger pink area. So I just wanted to make that point, that there's actually 3 maps before you, one for the firearms area, one for the pink area in Clark County, and then the other Washoe County map.
Yeah, I think that's a fair representation, because it was, basically we had a map, and there was a decision made right out of the gate, and that area was included, which kind of constituted where it seemed like the committee was unanimous. Well, they were unanimous in that particular aspect, but then we added on to it as the committee, and it more from what John is suggesting was actually could it be a standalone map on its own into what you guys see now. Is it progressed into what you have in front of you now. So.
I just like to make a clarification on that. That the reason we did that was because we had all these hunt units that we were trying to deal with, and I made that motion simply to, John, I didn't see it as a separate map. I just made that motion as a starting point to get us started in looking at these particular hunt units. So, I know we had this discussion at the cabinet, and, you kind of saw a difference of opinion there. I don't see that as a separate unit, as a separate map. I just saw that as a starting point because we reached agreement. We didn't have agreement on some of the other areas, but we reached agreement on that area. That area we could all agree on, and the other areas we had some disagreement on. So that was kind of my view on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but that's not how it ended up. I know that's how it started, as something everybody could agree on, but as it ended up, it was a discrete motion on that area, and it passed. So that motion passed unanimously for that area to have different visitation rules than are there now. Then a different discrete motion were for the other Clark County map. So one did not become the other. I know it started out that way in discussion, but as the motion was voted upon, and I think the record will show that, it's a standalone motion that was passed for an area. And it didn't originate as a map, but it ended up as a map. And so that's, I think we almost have kind of a process recollection difference on, I agree that that's how it started out, but it didn't end up that way. It ended up as a motion that passed, and what passed was an area.
Yeah, just to add some levity to the situation, I think essentially, if you're looking at it from a committee recommendation standpoint, it's a single map. If you wanted to break it out for how the motions were, you might be able to take that the yellow outline illegal firearm discharge area and color it red, because that recommendation was made on a 5-0 vote, and essentially everything else around there, I think there were various votes. So maybe that's the best way to think of it, but the bottom line, I think, for the commission to understand is that there was a specific vote taken for the yellow outline illegal firearm discharge area.
Right.
And then there was this, I think it was a series of votes for everything else around that. And
Right.
I think that's where
Yeah.
Karen and John are basically what they're trying to describe. And I think the punchline is just that there were two kind of a series of motions that got us to the overall committee recommendation, but realize that based on the motion, there were varying levels of acceptance among the members.
Right. And I think what's before you today for Clark County anyway are two maps or two alternatives. One for the firearms area, the yellow area, which passed 5-0, and the other is for the pink area map, which passed like a 3-2 vote. So,
And I think, John, maybe for purposes of moving forward, we presented it as if it were the proposal from the committee.
Right.
But I think you've made a good point, and I
Okay.
think that as this committee moves forward, I think what John is suggesting is that there's options, and just like any other combination of moving lines or not moving lines or not doing anything, they're all options at this point in time, and I think that that's what's represented here, and it just happened to be that particular option had a specific vote that was 5-0. So
I guess to add to that, and I think Dave's probably said it in the past, maybe better than I can state it, so maybe I'll steal his thunder a little bit in saying that at this point, we've had so much discussion amongst the committee that really we need to step back a little bit and take the temperature of the commission, because what we're really asking for is direction in terms of where we go from here. And I think it's a key instance to point that out and to figure out, how are we going to move forward at this point? This is the recommendation of the committee at this point. We're really looking for some input from the commission, and I think Dave did a good job of talking about it earlier. Whatever the recommendation and direction is from the commission will dictate how things play out in the future. But I think some folks are under the impression that regardless of what happens here today, it's done and over, and I don't know that that's a fair expectation.
So I guess that leaves it open to, it might be a little premature to go to public comment. So I think, I just suggest that maybe we have a conversation as best we can up here with what we've got in front of us and see if we can clarify or whatever we need to do.
Well, in particular, the Southern Nevada map, we struggled with time and time again. I would ask for suggestions from multiple people, draw something on a map. And I never got any feedback back. I wanted to have a map, and I couldn't get there, so I took it upon myself to continue working on this map. And this map's changed quite a few times. When it originally came out, in Area 262, it followed the basin boundary line clear up past Mercury. Followed 95, clear up. In Area 263, it basically went from Boulder City over to Prim along the Pole Line Road. It was a lot bigger area shaded in. There was a lot of public testimony taken that there was a lot of area out there that was very remote and rural and not high conflict. And having hunted down in some of those areas a little bit, but not being extremely familiar with it like Southern Nevada people are, I was doing the best I could without much help. Recognizing that I had more colored in than what I thought the intent of the legislation was, or what I had envisioned what it should do, but not knowing where to put the map, just looking for help. We came up with a map, and I still wasn't satisfied with what we came up with, because I had put some stuff on the map that I was just going off of people's recommendation on. So last week I got in my truck and drove to Las Vegas and looked at a lot of wildlife on the way down and back. And the one place that had been a bone of contention for all sides was Coal Creek. Dave, Jeremy, and I, when we had the prior trapping committee dealing with the last legislative mandate we had, we didn't know Kyle and Lee Canyon. We didn't know the surrounding area. So we took a field trip down there and spent a day driving around with Christy and members of Trail Safe and Southern Nevada people and the Trappers Association down there. So we got to know Kyle and Lee Canyon and that general vicinity, but we didn't see Coal Creek. So we were trying to act on Coal Creek and we weren't getting anywhere. So last week I drove into Coal Creek just to get it in my own mind what's there, and there's a community up there that I think we need to protect. There is evidence. I was there on a weekday, so I didn't get to see weekend traffic, but there is evidence. The parking areas are quite large. They look like they're parking areas more for offloading ATVs, motorcycles, and equestrian. There's probably a lot of horseshoes out there. I did see horseshoes out there while I was there, but it looked like it was an area that was enjoyed by off-road enthusiasts. But then when you get further up, there's campgrounds and there's hiking trails also. So I have a different take for what we were trying to figure out in Coal Creek. It's a pretty busy area, and I do believe it does need some protection. So, like I said, this map changed multiple times. We really shrunk it down in area 263, shrunk it down a lot around Kyle and Lee Canyon with a half-mile setback off all the highways. There's been a lot of testimony. It's a high-use area between Kyle and Lee Canyon, 95, and I don't know the road number that connects the two canyons. What's the name of that road?
Deer Springs.
Yeah, okay, but it's a high-use area, but in looking at it, it's high use by off-road enthusiasts. If you're going, what I saw when I was down there a couple times now, is if you're hiking and enjoying the walking aspect of Kyle and Lee Canyon, you're more up towards the top of it, towards the ski resorts, and there's some established trails up there. And during the last time the committee went over, we did setbacks on those trails. So I think we've protected the residents and everything around Kyle and Lee Canyon with the setbacks, and the trails are protected now. So that's why when we did the map and I made the motion on the final map that is in front of us today, I made a hole in the donut of Kyle and Lee Canyon, and it's white now, it's not red, because recognizing it does have some use, but it's more of a different type of use than people running with their dog. It's more of an off-road enthusiast type use, and I believe a good portion of that off-road enthusiast use is hunters and trappers using those roads. So that's how we came up with this map. Oh, I don't know if we came up with a map. We voted on a map that I kept trying to revise.
Okay, so I don't know, is it helpful to kind of explain, I'd be glad to explain some of my thoughts on the votes that I took. Does that?
I think that'd be helpful if we could have some discussion amongst the commission so the public knows where we're at as commissioners, and then we can get some public comment and we'll bring it back and
All right.
go forward.
So maybe I'll start with the 96-hour, the statewide, and this was, it was a 3-2 vote, and I had dissented on that particular vote, and my thoughts behind it were twofold. Well, there was a couple reasons. One of the primary ones is I just have an internal belief that 96 hours is just too long. I think it should be something other than that, and I recognize the distances. I recognize how far away it is, but it's just the way I'm built, and 96 hours just seemed too long. So I wasn't in support of 96 hours for that particular reason. I think was I concerned about close proximity to populated or heavily used areas? Not specifically, and